Good day, friends. I'm Carrie Dillinger. This is Bible Class Topics. Today we want to talk about pleading the spiritual Fifth Amendment, those that refuse to answer questions asked by Jesus. Have you noticed how many people refuse to answer Jesus' questions? The chief priests and the elders of the people in Matthew 21 declined to answer his question about the origin and authority of the baptism of John. Very few, if any, gathered there gave him a straight answer. Much the same thing happens today, as many in religious circles refuse to give a straight answer to spiritual questions posed in our own time. One of their tricks is to talk around a subject for a while, but when they're done, they've basically said nothing. If that does not work, the old "I'm not sure what I believe, I'm still studying it" dodge will do the trick. Never mind that some brethren have been studying it for years and still have not made a conclusion. Paul warned Timothy to avoid those who were always learning and never able to arrive at a knowledge of the truth in 2 Timothy 3 verse 7. Yet another trick is to answer a question with the equivalent of pleading the Fifth Amendment. In other words, no comment. In recent years, we have seen numerous officials questioned before Congress or a grand jury who had pled the Fifth Amendment. Here in the United States, this is a constitutional provision to protect one from being compelled to give testimony resulting in self-incrimination. Why, then, would an honorable, law-abiding person try to shun an answer and keep a matter shrouded in silence? Why would one not want it to be known where he stands on a question or what action he has taken? The most basic reason is the fear of political or legal opposition. The safe road to avoid taking a stand is to stay quiet or issue a disclaimer to signal neutrality. Is it not sad when we see the tactics of political cover-up used in spiritual matters? In Bible times, some refused to take a stand for God and His truth. They were condemned for such cowardice. People of courage, daring to stand against the views of those in the places of power, were the ones approved by God. Let's take the case of John chapter 9. In John 9, Jesus gave sight to a man who had been born blind. When the Pharisees who opposed Jesus asked the man who had his sight restored, the man answered unashamedly, even of the objections of the powerful Pharisees. However, the man's parents did not exhibit such courage. The Pharisees asked them how their son received his sight, and the parents responded, "By what means he now sees we do not know, or who opened his eyes we do not know. He is of age, ask him, he will speak for himself." John 9:21. This was a dodge. The parents knew how he was made to see, but they were afraid to tell the Pharisees for fear of what they might do in retaliation. The following verses make that clear. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone confessed that Jesus was the Christ, he would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, "He is of age, ask him." John 9:22 and 23. They were cowards who issued their disclaimer to protect themselves from the Pharisees instead of standing for the truth regardless of the cost. Their cowardice is seen more clearly in their failure to defend the one who had acted with such grace in healing their own son. Now let's move on to John chapter 12 and look at this case. In John 12, we see another case involving those who were in places of power but did not want to lose their position by confessing Christ. Notice how the Bible describes these people. Nevertheless, even among the rulers, many believed in Jesus, but because of the Pharisees, they did not confess him, lest they should be put out of the synagogue, for they loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. John 12:42 and 43. Think about the influence for good these leaders could have had if only they dared to stand up for the truth. What a shame it was that such people loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. It's a sad fact that some still do. Finally, let's take a look at the case of Elijah's time. Elijah was a man who stood in opposition to the wicked ways of King Ahab and his wife Jezebel. Ahab and Jezebel had introduced the idolatry of Baal to Israel with all of its associated evils. Elijah stood against that system and urged others to oppose it as well. When Ahab came face to face with Elijah, the king's first words were these: "Is that you, O troubler of Israel?" 1 Kings 18:17. Elijah replied, "I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have, in that you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and you have followed after the Baal." 1 Kings 18:18. When all the people were gathered, they had a clear choice. Who would they believe and follow? Their king, who had the power over them, or Elijah, who spoke an unpopular message of truth in opposition to the king? The Bible records the occasion in these words, 1 Kings 18:21. And Elijah came to all the people and said, "How long will you falter between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal, then follow him." But the people answered him not a word. Those on hand that day were a Fifth Amendment crowd who feared the king more than they loved the truth. However, the prophet stood boldly that day, and God gave the victory to his truth through Elijah. Our society has witnessed unquestionable ungodliness on display in every realm, from places of political power to family relationships, from corporate settings to religious circles. Yet we have chosen a tolerant acquiescence over a bold stand for the right. It seems the voters in my country are ready to sacrifice a stand for honor as long as peace and prosperity prevail. Such is to be expected as characteristic of the world. Listen to 1 John 2, verses 15 through 17. "Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires, but whoever does the will of God abides forever." It is very distressing to see many among God's people doing this very same thing in principle. In recent years, we have witnessed an ever-growing series of false teachers being received, their errors being overlooked as no big deal, and their sins being tolerated within the church. Instead of boldly urging a stand for Bible truth, many church leaders in large congregations and preachers have taken the spiritual Fifth Amendment approach. Too many members have been more anxious to grow numerically, even at the sacrifice of truth. Unity and diversity has become the rallying cry of those willing to practice a growing tolerance, except towards those seeking unity based on Bible truth. It is clear that open division looms ever nearer the horizon, and each of us will soon face the decision of standing with a minority for truth or gathering with the masses who ignore pleas for open study in favor of silent tolerance of evil. To serve God acceptably, we must realize our responsibility to stand for God and His truth, regardless of what it might cost. It will sometimes cost us ridicule, opposition, even rebuke and reproof. But we must remember that it is the ultimate praise of God that we seek, not the temporary popularity of this world. I've been reading the old church bulletins again this month, and I found this article by Harry Osborne, published back in the late 1990s. I almost said the late 1900s. Well, the 1990s, in Watchman Magazine. It's just as topical today as it was 25 years ago. Thank you for watching. We hope to be back with you in just a few days with another video from Bible Class Topics. Until then, may God bless.